So this is a deep dive explanation of the meaning behind my recent song Atlantic Echoes, available to stream and buy on all platforms now. So the overarching story really is a tribute to the exchange of musicality and musical ideas across the Atlantic over the past few centuries. Now, the first verse deals with how music originating in the old world found its way, the root causes, or some of the root causes of how those music elements made their way to the new world. The second verse, verse 2, deals with the melting pot of America and how some roots music there was responsible for the origins of rhythm and blues music. And the third verse talks about how though the sort of the founding fathers of rock and roll came over back from America in the sort of the second echo, if you like, the returning echo back to the British Isles in particular, with the arrival of those forefathers into particularly the UK, and then the British invasion that ensued after that back into America. So let's look into the lyrics into a bit more detail, and we'll sort of try and explain a little bit more about the reasoning why I chose these words. So verse 1, reels and ballads. So, those of you with any familiarity with British music will perhaps know that there are sort of dances known as reels that are particularly popular in Scotland. You might have heard of the Scottish reel, and also ballads, not only known to the British Isles, but in particular the Irish tradition. So Irish ballads, were very much a part of the history of the British Isles. Maypole dances, more origin wise on the second line there, coming from the English tradition, although that is also a European tradition, I understand as well, having done a bit of research around this. Avini's Waltz for the King of France, that's sort of a testament to or a nod to the more kind of highbrow music, so not really so much folk music, but those that was around the courts of Europe and in the last few centuries, that would have had some influence on some of the lay people, but so mainly there is sort of a divide there between sort of the folk music, reels, ballads, maypole dances, and the sort of the highbrow the aristocracy were their music that they were kind of exposed to. Wailing harps, moving on to line 5 of verse 1. Wailing harps is a particular nod to harps being the musical emblem of Ireland, and a wailing harp would be like sort of a suggestion that all is not well in Ireland, and the reason for that being that of course, around the start to middle of the 19th century, the Irish potato famine coming about, potato rot, of course the next line being a direct nod to that, with rot being the sort of the type of disease that was the root cause of the potato famine. Well, certainly what was causing the potatoes to be not doing very well. I've done some reading around, of course, the root causes of the potato famine. Of course, those go a lot more deep rooted in terms of and just neglect, and really the Irish people being not looked after in the way that they really should have been, with a lot of blame being assigned to the English and the British government at the time, and there were other factors as well, which I'm still reading up about. But that really, that potato rot Wailing Harps line is a direct reference to the potato famine and the cause, therefore, of the Irish people emigrating to both the British Isles but also across the Atlantic to settle in the Americas, in North America in particular. Highland Clearance, the penultimate line of verse 1, is a nod to one of the causes of Scottish people's emigration to both Ireland and also across the Atlantic to North America, with the reforms of the Highlands being, as I say, one of the root causes of those that emigration of the Scottish people to North America. And Bonnie plots, that also, going back to the sort of the Jacobean rebellion, this was those of you who know your history will know that there was a plot by some Scottish people trying to get Bonnie Prince Charlie, a Scottish prince, back on with a claim to the English throne, and that unfortunately that Jacobean plot for Bonnie Prince Charlie was unsuccessful, and the people behind that were forced to basically flee, and some of the places where they fled to included North America, so my understanding is. So that is the first wave of this this Atlantic echo going out is verse 1 there. Hopefully that I've managed to get that across in some capacity, and pay tribute to some of the musical roots in not only the British Isles but also within Europe a little bit as well there. So moving on to verse 2, we now move to the New World, and what I'm attempting to do here in verse 2 is pay tribute to, in particular, black African people and how they settled, and their experiences, terrible experiences mostly, in the New World as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. Holler's gospel, Holler's is a direct reference to some of the songs that were sung by the slaves when they were working in the fields or on the railroads, for example. They would be it was known as like a hollering technique that they would use, so that the style of their singing. Gospel, of course, the roots of gospel music come very much rooted in the African black African American people. Chains, of course, needs no explanation with the reference there to slavery. Steeples, again, the churches were a big part of the communities of the black American people, origin of course black African people, to say the origins of course being the churches there, and of course steeples being a reference to churches, and of course that sort of relating to the gospel music that was sung in the churches by the black people in America at around about that time, and still to this day. The Big Muddy Cool, the Big Muddy being a reference, that is one of the older nicknames for the Mississippi River, and cool was quite a deliberate use of the word cool, because again, the sort of the cool and holler kind of style of singing, again, that the black slaves were doing when they were working in as I say in the fields in the New World, under conditions of terrible conditions of slavery of the African people. There we go. And then we move on to the second half of verse 2. So Delta porches, again, Mississippi Delta, big reference there to the Mississippi River. That was where a lot of these a lot of the black Americans had been taken to work in the Mississippi Delta, and this is where porches, there's quite an allusion there to the you sort of almost like a stereotype, but like the old black guy on his porch strumming a guitar, and that kind of that being the root of where a lot of the rootsy rhythm and blues came from in America. Roots and Fuse, of course, roots music in America, that fusion that was going on in that part of the world at that particular time, the coming together of different influences, the gospel music, the call and holler style of singing, and even then some of the instruments that had come over, from Europe and the British Isles in terms of some of their folk instruments, the Appalachian influence as well there, although there's not a direct reference to that, but that kind of whole fusion that was going on in the eastern side of America was very much has been referenced here again. Moonshine cans, of course, perhaps you may or may not be aware that was very much one of the drinks that was popular in that time, in that kind of moment and that era, in that part of the world. Moonshine drink, moonshine cans, and rhythm and blues there, of course, a direct reference to the rhythm and blues, and the roots of that being in the Mississippi Delta region, as covered, hopefully not well, quite good references to that era in verse 2. Then, of course, the bridge just says, people moving here and there, that old-time folky music everywhere, just a general summary there of how, the movement of the folk people, and their music, their folk music being brought with them everywhere, across the Atlantic in that manner to start with. Then the chorus, Atlantic echoes, the people's sound here, abound from him to you and you to me, about this being a very much a grassroots thing, a very much folk orientated history that I'm trying to describe to you here in terms of this Atlantic Echoes song through history, certainly in the last few hundred years. Moving on to the third verse, Buddy, Richard, Berry and Fats, direct references here to the early rock pioneers of America. So Buddy Holly, Little Richard, Chuck Berry and Fats Domino, very much recognised as the forefathers of rock and roll, essentially. There was a few more I could have covered, but that I was looking for a nice rhyme for cats, if I'm honest, and I thought Fats was a nice one there, and I wanted to get in as try to get a varied 3 or 4 people in there as I could. The King and the Jester. That's the King, of course, King of rock and roll, Elvis Presley, and the Jester is a little reference actually to American Pie, the Don McLean song, where he talks about the jester in a cast on the sidelines, and that is understood that the jester in American Pie lyric by Don McLean is a reference to Bob Dylan. So that, of course, the jester here in my lyric is also a reference to Bob Dylan, at least that is how it is meant, with them being our ancestral cats, those 6 figures. Again, I could have gone on, been more elaborate, but I needed to keep it succinct as much as I could to make it a nice tight lyric here. Then we move over to the next line, and records for sale. Records, of course, music records for sale. A little play on words there. Not only were the records for sale, as in on sale, because in the post-war era, the early 50s, the youth had a lot more expendable income in the post-war period, and therefore they could afford to get interested and buy their own music. And obviously record players had been developed there, so that that they were affordable now for families and younger teenagers, and also for sale, not only for sale to buy, but also to sale, as in a ship setting sail, because again, I'm sure some of you at least will know that that the records from the early rock pioneers in America, Buddy Holly, Little Richard, Chuck Berry, Fats Domino, etc., were brought over by the dockers in Liverpool. That's hence the next line. In particular, coming into the Liverpool port, a lot of the Irish dockers actually, I've since found out, And so a little play on there, really, that how the records were coming in from the Americas there into the Liverpool docks in particular, and then finding their way amongst the youth of Liverpool. And that directly leads on to the next line, quarries. Now this is a little play on words, nod, if you like, to the Quarrymen, which of course those of you with any sort of appreciation of the history of the Beatles band will know that John Lennon's first band was called the Quarrymen, and it was at a village fete in Liverpool where the Quarrymen were playing, where Paul McCartney first saw and met John Lennon, and they got talking, and the rest, as they say, is history. Masons, that is a little nod to not only rock masons, masons being stonemasons, the working of stones, and rock, obviously rock music, but also masons, stonemasons, stones, rolling stones, as in the band the Rolling Stones, because not only were at that time the Beatles and in their early infancy, but also down in the Dartford area, just outside London here where I live in Kent, the Rolling Stones, of course Mick and Keith were, I'm not sure about the exact timelines, but certainly around that time, maybe slightly just after the Beatles possibly, that they were, obviously they had their famous meeting on a station, on a station platform, and got talking about R&B music, and again, wow, imagine if with all those things coinciding, let's roll on rock, and that's the next line. They're the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and then I've got, I could have gone on here, but of course you've got the Kinks as well, plenty of other bands as well, but those are probably the main few that to be acknowledged, at least to start with, rolling on the rock tradition, in this way that seems to be kind of how we do it between us and the Americans, right? I mean, it is a toing and froing of musical tradition, respect, and just for the love of music and rock and roots, and even going back folk music as well. As I've tried to draw that meandering line through history through this song of Atlantic Echoes. Fuel the fire, water the seed. This is a call to action for us, those people wanting to carry on this tradition of Atlantic Echoes. Fuel your own fire, water your own seed, play your old six string till your fingers bleed. Little nod maybe to Summer of '69, Bryan Adams, one of my favourite rock songs of the last 30 years or 40 years or so. Just a call to action really there, just to if you in any way are inspired by this, then pick up a guitar, fuel the fire, make your own way, water the seeds of what came before, fuel that fire, and build on what's been before, because that's the way forward, and that's how it always has been with music, rock music in particular, and folk. Okay, right, that's me. I hope you've enjoyed that today. It's been a real pleasure going through, breaking it down for you. Any questions, pop them in the comments or DM me, and I'd love to answer them. I mean, it'd be great to hear your thoughts on the meaning behind, or certainly the intended meaning behind the lyrics of Atlantic Echoes by me, Ryan Fox. Cheers.